Well, good evening. We're going to start the workshop meeting for November and welcome those who are joining us on Zoom. And our president, Jay Dwarren, will be a little late tonight, but he will be here. So we'll just go ahead and start. Alex, would you like to call the roll, please?
I'll start with the mayor this evening,
Present.
and Jay Dorn will be with us a little bit. Rochelle Williams
Here.
and Valerie Renthaler,
Here.
Adam McDowell,
Here.
Actadia,
Here.
and Deb Cassini Klein,
Here.
and of course Diane Law.
Here. Okay, well, the first thing we always do, which is our favorite part of the meeting, is to hear from our citizens. So if anybody who wants to tell us what's on their mind, we'd be happy to hear it. Looking forward to hearing it. So let's see what Alex has here.
We're going to go ahead and Ken promote you to panelist. And when you get back, you can go ahead and turn on your camera and unmute. Ken Balky will be up first.
Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Ken's birthday.
This is a background for somebody that I know. My apologies.
We were gonna think we're
There's a cake on there.
So there's not gonna be any cake, Ken?
I forgot to change it. My apologies. It's Ken Balky, 2007 Hampstead Drive. And is calling to say hello that I haven't, gone AWOL here. I've been sort of quiet the last month. Have some nice things happened, but also some challenging things too. But anyways, I'm calling in as a resident, and I just wanted to thank the borough for all the workers working so hard to clean up the leaves on our streets. This is a very unusual fall. I keep the data for our leaf fall. And up to this time last year, we had, Ruthie and I had put 30 bags out. Well, as of tonight, we have 61 bags in our driveway. So we have 90. So their leaves came down much faster than in past years. And it actually made the streets pretty dangerous. And I was impressed that the crew came through at least 2, maybe even 3 times here to do it. And it ended up, it saved a lot of us residents having to bag quite a few leaves as a result of it. So I just wanted to say thanks to the borough staff for their efforts. And also Alex had put out together a real nice write-up about, planting trees along what other cities and towns have done. And I have an email and write-up I'm putting together to respond to that, everyone, and it'll be for discussion with the climate change committee whenever we can fit it on the agenda. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. Always
Thanks,
good to
Ken.
see you.
Good seeing you too.
Anyone else would like to join us or speak this evening?
Just as a reminder, if you want to speak, go into the settings there and raise your hand.
Nope. Okay, anybody on the phone?
You can check that.
Okay,
There's one participant on the phone this evening. That's a call user, for them to talk if they would like to share.
nope. Okay,
So we have 10 attendees and some panelists this evening. There's a few people on Facebook I see watching live as well.
great. Okay, well, let's move on. Okay, you've all received the draft minutes for the Monday, October 3rd meeting and the Monday, October 10th meeting. Are there any comments, suggestions, additions to the meetings minutes? Okay, then we'll act on those next week. Now we have other staff and agency reports. Gateway? You there, Dennis?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
All
good
right, how you-
evening.
Good evening. How are you all doing?
Great.
I can't be there with you tonight. Kiddos are a little sick.
Yeah.
So I just have a couple of very quick items. One item regarding the 2022 paving program. The initial payment was made at last month's meeting, but we do still have some final punch list items that are being corrected. They're fairly minor in nature, primarily just reinstating some of the downspouts as they connect into the roadway. Other than that, also the sewer projects are coming to a close. We have the final pay application here this month for manhole to manhole lining. Excavation and CCTV are winding down. We have some punch list items for each of those. You may have seen some of us in the area. We've been completing the manhole inspections, which is part of your O&M requirements on a yearly basis. So there have been some guys out in the area recently completing manhole inspections. We have, I think, right around 600 manholes total, and we have to complete 10% of those each year. So about 60 of those are being inspected for this year. But that's all that I have at the moment, unless there's any questions for me. Oh, I do have one other item is this past month, we submitted the baseline due diligence report for the municipality. That is part of your consent order requirements, one of the first steps. I know a number of you had attended the Three Rivers Wet Weather Municipal Workshop this month. Within that, Churchill is still in a very good state as it comes to the consent order. Really, the only changes that we had with that baseline due diligence were removing one of the point of connections in which we are under the threshold for the number of connections. But, yep, that's all for me, unless there's any questions.
Any questions?
With the paving project, as far as where we are with the cost, can you revisit that?
Yeah, as of right now, with the anticipated final closeout, we should be approximately $90,000 below the bid amount and the original budget. And that's primarily thanks to, additional items that are added in there as just in case for sub-base repair and, other items that you never know until you mill off the road. I'm not sure exactly what the result will be, but so we were able to see a pretty good savings at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Hey, Dennis,
Thank you, Dennis.
does that include the extra cost though that we had to spend on storm sewer repairs on that road?
No, because that was performed by the storm sewer contractor. So that's a good point. We did have, we had a significant amount of storm sewer repairs right before work started. It was about a $20,000 repair. Was that one that was acted on? But I'll have to look at the total cost of all the stormwater repairs that were identified from CCTV that we completed.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Mhm.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you for the reports we get every month in our packet. They're nice and thorough. And we all understand what's going on.
Very good.
We think we do, but we know
Okay.
that. Yeah, okay, all right, Alex,
Our reports in the binder, and of course, we'll be covering some of the items this evening.
okay, all right. Mr. Bigliotti is not here. Woodland Hills EMS is not here, right? Wilkinsburg Joint Pen, anything there?
Well, Bill announced that
Yeah.
he will, at the end of his term, no longer be serving
Right,
as our representative of the board, and that's covered under item number 5. We have that noted
okay,
there as well.
all right. The library,
The reports in the binder,
tax collector,
you get the reports. She does have a few things on the agenda.
Yeah.
That we added this evening.
right, okay. Building inspection, anything?
I have a report from them, but I'm trying to massage it, so. it
Okay.
gets to be more what you guys want to see. It's a function of, code violations,
Mhm.
sort of GOP stuff that we need to make it make more sense for you all.
Yeah. Okay, I'm all for that, okay. Let's see, we're gonna skip management and government until Jay gets here. Okay, so we're gonna scoot that
Okay.
down the agenda, right? So, finance, Adam,
Yeah, so I think Alex has a PowerPoint presentation that he was going to go over with everyone to give you kind of the details of the budget, the big overview, and then our plan then, of course, is to be advertising the budget this month for adoption next month. So Alex, you want to take away?
Thanks, Adam. The first thing is we will have next week an agenda item for a resolution for the MMO. It's something we need to state. We had our pension auditor last month, and there's a couple of things that they wanted us to make sure we had. And one of them is to state what obligations we'll be making next year in our budget. So with that, before I go to the PowerPoint, this was this area that you see on the screen was something we had last month as well. And it gives you the beginning balance and the expenditures and the revenues. And right now it's a proposed balanced budget, and I'll get into that in some details. So let me stop sharing the Word document and begin to share the PowerPoint. Just give me a minute to get to that. There, I'll just get to the top. Start that.
Can everybody see that?
Mhm.
Want to make sure people online are able to.
So hopefully everyone can see it. We'll make this available after the meeting. It's a short PowerPoint and I won't be long. So the Borough Code requires that we do this, and we have to have it published for 10 or have it available for 10 days before you act. You're looking to do that in the middle of December. So we'll have plenty of time to do that. What we'd like the council to do is to authorize us to advertise the budget, letting the public know that it's available for view. We'll have drafts online following next week's meeting. So that'll be Tuesday, the 15th. We'll start to put those online, and as well as advertising in the newspaper. Where we were at this time last year, we adopted a budget of about 3.1 million, with expenditures about 3.2 million, with the difference of 75,000 greater and more expenditures than revenue, and anticipated ending balance of 493. So where are we at? Not all of the October numbers are in, so I'm going to be refining that over the next few days and clarify that a little better. But we're looking at a projected revenue of a little over 3 million, or right now, about a little over 3 million revenue. So we're very close to our budget we already have in hand. Expenditures about 2.5. But as the year closes, we'll be closer to 3.3 on both of those. And the difference will be a little less than what we budgeted, about 66,000 more spending than the revenue. One of the reasons our projected balance is as high as it is because of the American Recovery Program. We got some of that last year, and we got the second part this year. As far as the budget goes, the beginning balance, we're looking at about 1.3 million, almost 1.4 million revenue, and expenditures balance. No tax increases being proposed right now by the Finance Committee. And this just gives you an idea of how close it was to last year's budget. It's almost exact same expenditures as we had last year, a negligible 0.1% as far as the revenue goes. Breakdown, this is kind of interesting, and it's quite frankly amazes me when I look at statewide averages, is how reliant we are on the property tax. 65% of the borough's revenue comes from real estate taxes. And as many of you know, that we can show this in other charts. I don't have a chart for you now, but it's in the budget narrative to see how that dropped off when Westinghouse was reevaluated, and of course the Country Club, which is no longer on the tax rolls, declined. It's still very, very dependent upon real estate, and surprisingly not as dependent on the earned income tax, which is located in that 511 tax. About 23% of the revenue comes from the 511 taxes. The lion's share of that is the earned income tax that people pay in Churchill. Just gives you a little idea on the revenue side. Expenditures side, we have a big question mark. The CBA is unresolved, so the current draft budget has no salary changes at all, because we just don't know where that's going to end up. And we've done a lot of modeling, In fact, we have two different models that we try to figure out what it would look like and how the CBA could shake out. But you're looking at about an $85,000 increase in expenditure and or decrease in expenditure from the budget we had this year, about 2% difference. But again, without the CBA being resolved, the collective bargaining agreement with the police union in Churchill, this budget is just a draft. We'll see where it settles out. So getting into the detail, that help everyone understand the police department's about 48% of the borough budget, and personnel costs represent about 35% of the total. So we've got a lot of work to do working through the different scenarios for that. In general, 22% of the budget goes to the admin, which supports every part of the operation. Public works, 24%, public safety. We did add for the first time a small budget amount for emergency management planning and services to go along with fire. And as you can see, that's about 3%. Wow. If we had to pay for full-time fire or part-time fire, look at that public safety for police and we could get an idea what it would cost. Very thankful that people volunteer to answer calls at midnight and other times of the day, 7 days a week, 365 a year.
Yep.
So just kind of an overview. Again, we're looking at about 44% of our budget likely to be on hand starting January 1. We will have a capital budget. Of course, the highway fund is our liquid fuels that supports the capital. The operating reserve is that account, which we have like a rainy day fund. And the sanitary sewer fund is that which is supported by the rates that are paid with the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority. We will have a budget narrative. We're working on that. Those are, again, drafts in your binder. A lot of work going into that, and we're getting close, I would imagine, by the end of the month to have a really good draft of that available for you. As far as next steps goes, we'll be advertising the budget after next week's meeting. We'll be doing everything we can to get that budget online. We'll be utilizing Savvy Citizen. Please sign up for it, and social media to let people have ways to interact, to look at the budget, to look at the charts we've developed with the budget, and then eventually discuss it like we are tonight on December 5th at the workshop meeting, and God willing, adopt it on December 12th. So that's it for that. Hopefully, Adam, that was quick. Anything to add?
No, Alex, I think that was very a great PowerPoint, a great way to show the citizens to the high level overview of what we're doing from a finance perspective in the borough. So thanks for putting that together. And, as Alex said, we will have the course of the next month for public review of the budget.
The agenda does include those breakouts. If people look on the page 4 of the agenda, they'll see those general. We look to advertise the budget in that manner in the newspaper so people can see a little bit of where the revenue comes from and where the expenditure expectations are for the borough.
Thank you, Alex, for that.
Okay.
Thanks for having me. Just as a note of discussion on that, I would just say I appreciate all the time and energy that the finance committee's put in on that. I know they've been having very regular meetings, I think weekly. And then, of course, our staff, for the excellent work they do to give us the detail that we need and answer questions when they come up. So appreciate everyone's hard work. I know it's always a push, and I think it's an excellent job to give the detail that's needed and make sure that we're being very transparent and working hard for the citizens.
Two things. One, can you promote me so I can get the cat?
Yes, sorry about that.
And second, Madam Vice President, where are we in the agenda?
We're at public safety,
Awesome.
and then we put government last.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, let me pick myself up if you don't mind me
No,
jumping back in.
Go ahead.
I will really appreciate
You
it.
skip 5, so you went to J 5.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm last on the list, I believe indeed.
yes, we are.
We're gonna do 7 and then 5.
Mhm.
So we will move forward then, unless there's other conversation on the matter.
No.
All right. Forward to it, jump to public.
We have been asked to consider a training program in conjunction with the Turtle Creek Valley Council of Governments. I spoke with Paul over the weekend about the fact that perhaps it would be a good idea for the chief to come and brief us on this tonight. And he was not able to arrive. I certainly still have questions about that, and I don't know how the rest of you feel about it. I don't think that there has been a lot of detail. You know, I'm not inclined to move forward on that until we have that detail.
So what is the Turtle Creek Valley COG training or testing program rather?
So they're looking to test for a new hire.
Yeah, so for a little bit of a clarification, I think just kind of process wise.
Yep.
So whenever we look at hiring a police officer, there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can individually as your own borough test people and see if they meet the physical and testing qualifications to be an officer. And then once that's done, they go through the process of civil service and then a recommendation is made to council. One of the ways to kind of save some money on that also, kind of similar how we do some other things like SALT and other things where we do in, concert with
Right.
other communities, is to allow for the COG to provide the testing. And then what happens is, let's say 2 or 3 or 4 communities all are looking to hire. Then we all get together and the officers are aware of the fact that there are 4 communities looking to hire. They test and then they say, hey, I'm interested in this community or that community. And we get then from there, the list of eligible candidates for the position, right? So that kind of group testing puts us in a space that allows us to test and kind of have a better pool. I think I don't have any, just for a little bit of clarification, I don't have any issue with testing,
No.
and testing now in doing it kind of ASAP. We have in our budget for 1 officer. The thing that is the question, actually, I think, is about a 2nd officer, if I'm understanding correctly from the chief's perspective. And there really hasn't been discussion on hiring an additional officer outside of the 1st, right?
I thought it was just the first,
Right,
yeah.
no, that's the point. We, as council, have only discussed 1, right?
We do not have a budget for 2 though,
What
right?
we're saying is that we are under the impression that the chief sent an email asking for 1
One.
additional officer. Not
So we already have 1 budgeted. The chief sent an email stating that we have 1 budgeted.
Right.
What about more?
Oh,
And so there really isn't a question with regard to 1.
Because we're down 1, right?
That's not what I recall. I remember our budget from last year saying we were gonna budget for it, but before we were gonna approve actually doing it, we needed to see some
We need to discuss it. I'm not,
additional.
I agree with
Okay.
that.
okay,
I fully agree
Okay.
with that. Like, we internally need to discuss it.
yes.
What I'm getting
Is that he wants to
Additional
increase my
one,
budget.
oh.
I see. That's the conversations that are being shared with me, and so I'm sharing with you,
Okay.
right? I think there's 2 phases to this, right? The first, and I think there's some confusion sometimes with people under the concept of a budget, right? That a budget is a roadmap, it is a template, right? It is not a hard
Correct.
space.
Right.
And so I think the chief may have some confusion on that also.
Yeah.
Right? And then the second part, I think, is in terms of process wise, right, that the personnel decisions and where they're made, right, sit here and not there. So I think both those things are kind of running simultaneous and causing some confusion, if that is helpful.
Yeah, because
What-
just because it's on the budget doesn't mean that that's what's gonna, it's not set in stone.
Correct.
We could have, it's just a
Right.
guide.
Yeah, people are having a difficulty understanding that budgets are guides.
One other
Yeah.
question. When we hired our previous 2 officers, Justin and Libby, how did we do that? Was that through the COG or did we do that?
Same, I mean, that's, in terms of standard procedure for testing. Where I run into difficulty with, I think, some of the conversation, right? We do the procedures that are kind of best for Churchill, right? And sometimes that has meant we test and we don't see a candidate that works for us.
Right.
So we don't hire somebody. Right?
Mhm.
Sometimes, you know, we test and we see two candidates that are great and maybe we planned on hiring one, but we know there's a future need and we all talk and we say, let's hire two, right? But those decisions, again, I would just say rest here. There was some language in the last emails just about the kind of one and about testing, where there was a statement that not hiring left a bad taste that we tested and didn't hire.
Mhm.
And from my vantage point, you know, green lighting testing in no way means that we are automatically going to hire somebody from that pool if we're not satisfied
Sure.
with a candidate pool, right?
Hmm.
You know, I've hired 100 people, more than 100 people in my time, right? And oftentimes I put up, you know, both in the government and outside and all over the place, put up ads and, you know, gotten applicants and pulled it down and said, you know what?
Right.
Nope, there's nobody here that fits right now,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And likewise, I have created positions. When you got two people and you're like,
Okay.
these people are great,
Mhm.
right? I want both of them. So it rests on you all in terms of the personnel decision, whether it's 1, 2, or anything else. But there hasn't even been a budgetary discussion about an additional outside of the one.
Mhm. No.
And on the one, it still rests in this space. We can test and still make that decision. Right? I don't like the idea that testing mandates us to hire somebody without knowing who the people are that we're looking at and making that kind of decision. So that's my take on it.
I'm curious what the process is of the testing, like what exactly is the testing?
There's a physical piece, a aptitude piece, and a psychological, if I'm correct. Am I missing any of
Like
that?
an oral,
What's that?
an oral exam.
That's gonna, yes,
We tend to do the final psychological kind of before hire, once we bring
that's
that
right.
off.
Same thing.
They usually bring in a retired chief to administer these tests
Mhm.
from one of the communities. And it's pretty common. The South Wales COG does the same thing. Northwest COG does the same
And the
thing.
agility stuff, well, we usually have at the police academy. I think, so.
I had a lot of smart comments, so I'm not gonna make, now that you said that. So, but to the point of testing, you know, I don't know how you are, I'm comfortable moving forward with testing,
Oh, yeah.
right?
There's a deadline on us joining in the testing,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
That's why we're having this discussion.
So I mean, it makes sense to me. I just want to clarify the difference between, I think, what's been presented
Yes.
in testing from the chief and what our actual role and responsibility is as council.
When is the deadline for that? To let them know?
Well, the chief, last time he communicated to me, said it was put off. It was supposed to be about a week ago.
Mhm.
So it looks like some chiefs were still having these conversations with him during local units, and he wasn't able to give me a firm date of when he needed. He was happy with the timeline of you telling him next Monday, you know, Tuesday if you will, to participate.
So usually a cost involved is split amongst depending on
Correct.
how many.
Yeah, because we would be hiring help to
Yeah, to go
administer
through
the
the process.
test and all that stuff.
But if you don't do it through the COG, then you absorb all the costs yourself and it's not split
Sure.
out.
In the same way, this is about increasing the applicant pool, right? Because we
Mhm.
participate with others, more interested officers will apply because they're hoping to get a, and it's by ourselves, we may not be able to.
In
Have
the
step in.
past, where we have really had a challenge in the past in pool testing was that our new officers automatically went into the school. The way that we ran things here. And so we would get qualified candidates who may not want to be SROs. Want to
That's
be in a
right.
school district. And so therefore, as for lack of a better way of saying it, as cushy as I think the Churchill job tends to generally be, right? It's a very well-paying, low crime area, right? So you get lots of pay as an officer with a lot less risk on your day-to-day, I think. When they were faced with the idea of, but you're gonna be basically a school officer, we
Yeah.
lose
Different
a
ball.
lot of candidates. So I think we're not in that space anymore. And so that may actually even open up our pool a little larger than it's been in the past.
Yeah.
When does testing begin? Does anybody know? Okay.
I think I mean, isn't that based on the community's desire?
I would imagine if they even started next week to advertise, you know, it will be, the actual testing plan won't start till after the first of the year. We'll
Yeah.
give a 30-day to get applicants, and to be honest with you, we all want to promote a diverse pool, so when we find that out, hey, the window's open, get your application, and it costs like $50 or $100 for the applicants to apply.
Yeah.
They put some skin in the game besides just a resume and a cover letter kind of thing.
Uh,
We want to all work to make sure a lot of people hear that that's open, because that's our challenge, to be honest with you, is getting a diverse application pool, even to start.
And to that point, the last time we talked about this, and we pushed hard, but not in the ways I think that produced the kind of results. And we did get a more diverse pool than in the past, and unfortunately, without getting into specifics, I think it would be inappropriate, but one of the candidates that we had hoped to hire, we were unable to do so. That being said, you know, one of the things that I have always found a problem for me is that if you don't have a diverse applicant pool, right, it's a question of how you are promoting the position, not a question of the pool. Right, and so I think it may be worth it for us to take a minute as we move forward in the concept of testing and think about, right, do we want to, you know, use some resources to ensure, and it's not major resources, right? But to ensure that we are pulling from a far more diverse pool by contacting, right? And working with, you know, associations that work to those pools, right? I mean, there's Black law enforcement, there is women's law enforcement, there's Latino law enforcement, all these things exist, right? It certainly makes bottom line sense to me that if you approach them and say, we're really interested in diversifying our pool, that it also shows a sincere interest.
Yeah.
Right? And makes it more likely that you're able to pull from this.
Well,
Anything else coming out of
no, I really need to have more input, from the chief, and that input has to come to the whole council.
is he on the reason he was unable to? Okay.
So I talked to him over the weekend, so if you can make it Monday night. And got back to him saying. Have other plans.
Yeah. Again,
You know, that's just.
So I would like to ask for clarification. I know the Public Safety Committee has not met for some months now, and I believe that the chief inquired about hiring a new officer at least a month or so ago. And so is there a reason why the Public Safety Committee has not gathered to review this request? And get the questions?
and there is, and I think part of that will come in that of restructuring some of the committees that have been going through a few things, and I think they've had the conversations about what this is gonna look like. So I think the Public Safety Committee will meet soon. But I'm also looking at probably restructuring things in a way that's best for council. And so we'll discuss that when we move to government management.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
Excellent.
So do you want to circle back to 5, or do you want to go into infrastructure?
Yeah, let's circle back to 5 and kind of run through. Like your main points, and I've got a few things that I want to make sure that I could discuss on the 5.
Yeah, for me, I just want to bring to the council's attention that this is the time of year. To be honest with you, I'd like September to be talking about this, but it's a little late. Where we think about year-end board appointments, and that begins with trying to get a handle on who's going to be willing to continue in service. We do know, as we mentioned earlier, that Bill Coles for the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority won't be. He's done his terms and he's not looking to be reappointed, so we need to find a member there. But I reach out to each of these individuals to confirm their interest. And then, of course, where we don't have interest, we need to find names. And if you notice, that doesn't need to get into a lot of detail tonight, but we are looking to not only reappoint you to the committee, but add more to the rec board, because you have
Right.
vacancies.
Two available,
Yeah.
two available. We do have 2 candidates we're looking at, so I will report back next week, but they look very good and they're very interested.
And if all goes well, in December, we'll be making these appointments, and then they'll begin their terms as these terms expire, the new terms beginning in January. As far as that goes, there's a couple requests that have already been noted related to the tax collector. The first is the deputy is currently Carol Donahue, and she's looking at having Toby Weaver appointed. We have advertised the Act 57 new law that would do waivers for people who got that tax notice, and I guess we're in a bad spot when it comes to new purchase. We discussed that last month, and we advertised that. Also, the tax collector is looking at you all considering, and I imagine you'll have a committee consider this, the idea of installment payments for Churchill real estate taxpayers. It's very common on the school district side, not so common on the local government side. As you can imagine, our bills aren't as high as the school district. And we'll have a lot more questions, I think, on that one, but I just want to get that on her front of you. She's making that request and consider that. And then the last thing was for me, the pension administrator. I mentioned we had the pension audit, and it came to our attention that Donna was still our pension administrator, and we just need to correct that. And going forward, and if we can do that next week, the pension audit won't have a fine, or just basically acknowledge we have. Yeah, I'm administrator.
Quick perfunctory kind of change for someone who no longer exists, who's still listed on the ad.
Yeah.
Question on the
She
deputy,
does exist, yes, it's not Ralph, right?
question on the deputy tax collector. Do we know what prompted that change? And I know when
That was
we.
my question.
When we originally kind of were going with, when Danielle got elected and then was kind of suggesting her first, she sent some, like a bio over of the person and, kind of why she was recommending them. Did we get anything
I
like
can
that?
speak to that. It's a convenience item, so. Our issue here was that we had staff receiving tax receipts,
Right.
but that was not, we weren't really authorized to do that. So let's say you go to her house, for example, to do, because that's her address, and you want to give her your taxes. And for whatever reason, she's not there. He can't take those taxes either. But they're not going to go down the shelf on to go see Carol to do those taxes. So this isn't uncommon that someone's spouse would be deputized as the deputy tax collector. And it just creates convenience for the taxpayer who happens to show up at her door and want to hand over taxes. They really can't hand them over to anybody but her or Carol, and Carol's in another community. So that's it in general, but she can give you more explanation for that on her own.
Yeah, the difficulty, I get it, it makes perfect sense, right? I completely get it. The challenge that I have here, and again, I don't remember a lot of things, but I do remember conversations. That's all I got left in my memory bank, right? And we had a conversation about the deputy and about the fact of having somebody in Churchill. And that conversation led us to a space where she was saying, or it was being explained to us, that as the tax collector over there, she brought experience and help and things that would do this.
Right.
And council was interested in having somebody local, right? Now she's saying to us that the issue is we don't have somebody local, right? Because they have to go somewhere. And it begs the question of whether or not she had thought through her initial request. More so than it begs the question of whether or not her spouse can be deputy
Yeah,
tax
right.
collector as a matter of convenience, because you're right, that is something that happens all the time. But I think without trying to make things complicated, before we end up in another situation 6 months from now with a new request for a deputy tax collector, because we realize that now, there's some other issues she didn't think about, that she needs someone with experience versus she needs someone who's local. I would like a little bit of clarity from her on the matter as to why we are where we are then. I think is where I'm at. Maybe I'm wrong. It's just my observation of it.
I agree with your observations, Jay, and I'll just add that I know one of the concerns we discussed, in one of our meetings was that, I guess the benefit after she kind of sold us on, okay, it doesn't have to be someone from Churchill. The benefit was that if there was ever a problem, it's somebody who's already trained in tax collection and could quickly take over
Right,
those
exactly.
duties and handle it so we weren't losing revenue, or having any type of backup and paperwork. So now we'd be losing that, and that would definitely be a concern I'd have.
So if she's here, if she can provide just some clarity on that, that would be super helpful.
She's in the
Yeah,
room.
but that's what I'm asking.
I can promote her to.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to add one thing, that what you were saying, the advantages that we were told were going to happen because of this. I want to know what we're losing
Right.
by
And
leaving that
That's the
arrangement.
complication of the
Mhm.
space we were into, the space. we
Yeah.
were in, I think.
Go ahead, Danielle, and unmute yourself, and if you want to turn your camera on, you can do that as well. Thank you.
All right. When I first started as tax collector, Carol Donahue was my mentor. She was the one that I went to with any type of questions. And if you recall, I didn't start actually collecting the taxes until July. So the reason I had Carol as my deputy was because she was the one that was showing me the ropes. Now that I've got my feet wet and I know what I'm doing, I've been training Toby, my husband. And it makes more sense to have someone who has access to the computer and all my files right here to act as my deputy. And this is a common practice. Dan Doring's wife was his deputy. And Tom in Swissvale, his wife is his deputy. And having just come back from the convention, there are quite a few that follow these guidelines. So are there any questions?
So I do understand it's a common practice, and I actually don't have much difficulty with the concept of the practice. I think we were trying to understand where we were before a little bit to understand where we are now. And so what you're saying, just for clarity, is that you had the reason that you had selected her before is because she was essentially showing you how to do it at the point of being the tax collector, and now you have a greater understanding. You can move towards yourself. I don't have any additional questions. I don't know if anybody else does.
No, that answers me.
Right. So we appreciate it. Yeah, I don't have any personal objection to it.
Thank you, Danielle.
So,
All right, thank you.
all right. What else we got on your end? Anything else? All right. So just a couple of things under government management that I wanted to cover. And I think you had asked about committees, and one of the things that I had been looking at, and then of course had kind of a rough ride of it, but we're back on the road, was kind of how our committees are functioning, what the roles of our committees are, and making sure that there's clarity on kind of how everything operates. So there's a few things I just want to discuss to make sure that I'm covering everything, and my memory's so bad now I have to write things down so I remember things. It's terrible for me. But first thing, we talked about this in the beginning, in looking at committees. That committees are not something that are codified, right? They're not mandated. Committees are something that we as council use as a tool to help kind of effectively move items along, get through research agendas, so forth. That being the case, I think it's important that we understand that committees should not hinder process, but should always help process, right? And so if we see it hindering process, we need to kind of rethink kind of how our committees are running. The second thing that I don't have any presidential power trips, so anyone who wants to take this seat, take it. Right? I will say that right now. Having said that, I will. Hey man, right here for you. Just say the word. I'm out. Right? But committees function essentially, and the committee assignments function at the discretion of the presidency. Right. So the assignment of who's on what committee, why you're on the committee, because it turns out that the other job that we have as the president is to manage you guys from trying not to kill each other. Right. And so that being the case, the third thing, of course, is that our committees function as 3-people membership with the chair. Right. And so the chair is charged with running the committee, right, and is in operating it, and is the voice of the committee to council. So one thing kind of right away I want to make sure everybody understands is that if you're appointed to a committee, and as I said, I'm looking at kind of reshaping some of these committees. If you're appointed to a committee, the voice of anything that matters in that committee comes from the chair, right? It does not come from individuals on the committee. If the individual on the committee says, hey, I'm interested in something, you talk to your chair talks to the committee, the chair talks to council, council approves, right? Otherwise, we start to go haywire, right? The second thing with that is if you have an interest and you're not on the committee, it goes through the committee. So there were a couple of emails that went back and forth this week of things that weren't within a committee. It goes inside that committee. That committee looks at it, makes a recommendation, and then we have conversation as council. That's the purpose of our committees. If we function outside of that, then committees actually detract from process. Fourth thing, at this point. When we're operating as committees, right, or operating, quite frankly, outside of committees, right? Our external communication, if it is not related to the chair of the committee, should come through the chair of the committee. That goes for every single space. The chair of the committee has relationships, right? If you have a question about it and you're not in that committee, right, it can come through myself or Diane, right? But ultimately, external communications have to come from a space where it is a Churchill voice. Now, you have the right, every one of you, to speak individually on your own behalf, right? No council can tell any individual council member, right? No person can tell any individual person that they don't have the right to speak. But what you can't do is represent yourself as the will of council, right, in those communications. Because we may not know what's going on. There's been a couple different times in which representatives have been contacted, and then I've been contacted by representatives, right, saying like, what's going on, right? And I don't know what's going on. Right? And whether it's the government relations, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's communications, whether it's finance, it comes through the chairs. That's how we operate. Now, another kind of point I just want to make sure that we're covering with all of this. When we have external communication, and I defer, president or not, to the communications committee, right, on the best way to do this, right? We have a communications committee for a reason. We have a government relations for a reason. But one thing that I will tell you all kind of right now, right? When we're communicating externally, right? If it is something that is related to a committee, right, we're not. 9 times out of 10, right? The person whose name we want at the bottom of that is the guy who works full-time, right? If Alex doesn't, if Alex isn't the signature, then we need to talk about it and figure out why. If Gavin is the signature as our solicitor, we get it on a legal matter, right? Like I'm not signing it, you're not signing it. If a committee chair is going to have an external communication that's in writing, right? I would assume we have some conversation about it, right? We do not want to present externally, right, that we are individuals speaking for all of council, right? Which brings me to, I think, my final point. I've got 5 or 6 points on this, but I just want to go through them all, probably 10 points by the time I'm done. So, Alex, all of staff, Gavin, all of contractors, right? Felipe/Dennis, right? These folks, right, their time is precious. And so things that go to them go through committee. And if it's an individual request, so if it's not committee related at all, like, it's just something that maybe there's a fundraiser that's going on that something would be really, you have a question about, can I participate? Like we've had that with issues of like, 50/50s, or can we do those kind of things? Then that's got to channel through myself or Diane, right? We do not, right, try to dictate to the staff day-to-day operations, right? That goes for every one of us in every space, because when we do that, they can't do their jobs. It happens over and over and over again. I've seen it from different councils. It's not new, so it's just one of those things that have to be kind of explained again. But it's a regular problem, right? The staff know what they're doing, right? They're here to help support us. So if we have a question about something, we don't know how something goes, we run it through our chair. Our chair either runs it directly through them or through the vice president or president. And then we get our answers. But where we can't be, right, for all of us, is we cannot be individually tasking them. And if they come back and they say, listen, I can't do it. If there's an issue, you come to Diane or me and you say there's an issue, right? You say, hey, my committee really needs this. We need to put this on the front burner. I know they're busy, but it's budget time, right? Or I've got a project going on right now, right? That we need to understand whether we can do, and that comes through us. I do not think it's beneficial for us as council to spend our time pushing the minutia that the staff already understand. I know that there are things we don't understand, that we want to understand everything, and I applaud everyone's curiosity. But I recognize, you know, I've seen it with Gavin, I've seen it with Alex, I've seen it with Dennis, you know, they know what they're doing. You know, I said this before during the Amazon thing, right? If you don't trust them, right? If we don't trust, you know, Alex, if we don't trust Gavin, then we need to release them, right? Like, that's the reality of it. Doesn't mean we can't question, but the questions come through committee, right? If we have questions on finance, there's a finance chair, right? I'm not on the finance committee. If I've got a question about it, I don't go to Alex and go, I need you to pull this information for me. I go to Adam, I say, what's going on with this? Right? Adam answers that question for me. Versus Jay, you have no idea what you're talking about, be quiet, which is probably more accurate, right? But that has got to be how we run. Right? If we don't run that way, the committee structure is not worthwhile. So I looked at the committees. I'm going to make a few tweaks so that we operate more effectively, because I think we're getting bogged down in a few spaces of minutia. I will put a draft out to Alex. I'm going to talk to Alex a little bit more. I will put out in new committees. It's not going to be major changes. I'm not, you know, people have been working on things. I'm not going to pull the finance committee apart in the middle of doing budgeting. I'm not an idiot, right? At least not that much. But I think there's going to be some tweaks, because I'm seeing some problems in how we're operating. And I'm hopeful that in doing that, as we move forward, we're going to do it in a way that's more effective. Key takeaways, right? Chairs, run the voice, right? Things that operate outside of it, put it back inside its committee. Alex, staff, right? Task requests go through chairs, right? External communication, chairs and the president, vice president should be aware of external communication. So I just wanted to take that moment, make sure we're all clear on that. Because if I'm not saying it and people don't know it, then it's on me. It's not on anybody here. So that is my only government relations. I will tell you now that government relations will need to codify this to some degree so that it's in writing, so you all have a copy of what I'm talking about more than just my words. We'll create a policy in the space and distribute it to all staff. I feel like I'm to all council, so that we have a copy of the policy and everyone's aware of how we want to operate.
When are the new committee structures beginning?
So I'm thinking the first of the year is the best space for that. I mean, we're gonna head into holidays. And so, you know, where's that gonna take us? You know, I mean, we can have them in front of us, but realistically, I don't think we're gonna, you know, Thanksgiving's right around the corner. We hit into Christmas, you know, had the Gavin's party. We're coming.
That's right.
It's the first year of
Plenty of
coming.
time to recover from that.
And then, you know, and then I think we kick it up.
Okay, so I would like to add a couple things to what you just said. I'm gonna take my mask off so people can hear me clearly. So I think a lot of what you're discussing was prompted by an email that I sent out concerning the paving of Greensburg Heights. I did have a conversation with the county, and as a result of my conversation with the county, they have moved forward with paving Greensburg Heights. I made council aware of my interest in getting Greensburg Pike paved back in April of this year, as well as around Labor Day. As a result of conversation with the county and moving forward with paving, they sent a letter to the borough requesting that there were a number of tasks that we were supposed to complete. And one of one of those tasks was to reach out to homeowners, the postal service, the school districts, anybody who may be impacted by the paving that was happening in Greensburg Pike. We utilized the Savvy Citizen to reach out to some of the homeowners, and I felt that a letter should be sent to households that live on Greensburg Pike or around Greensburg Pike, because everyone is not signed up on Savvy Citizen. There was some pushback regarding that, and I also wanted to include my name on the letter to homeowners regarding the paving of Greensburg Pike. One, because if there is a concern or issue with the paving, I would like for residents to have a direct person or line of communication, in addition to Alex, the borough manager, to present those issues, being that I did take the initiative to get that addressed. As far as the finance committee, I'm also a member of the finance committee, and there have been questions that I've had regarding the budget and line items specifically. And I understand that you're saying that the communication should go through the chair. However, as a committee, we meet the chair and also committee members. And I feel that it is, not only am I an elected official, but I'm also a taxpayer. And so I should have the ability, excuse me, I should have the ability to ask questions regarding the budget and where money is being allocated during that conversation. And it's not inappropriate to ask those kinds of questions. So I understand that there are committees that you have created to conduct council business. But I also feel that we each are elected by members of Churchill to represent the greater interest, which is making Churchill a better community. And ultimately, if that is our focus, then any work that we do is moving that agenda forward.
So I appreciate that. I'm not going to kind of belabor this, right? So I'll be kind of short for space. In terms of paving projects, county paving projects, you know, I have dealt with the county for a very long time. You know, it turns out that their plans generally extend beyond like a 3-month kind of process. They have a pretty long scheduling in that space. But nonetheless, when I look at the communication space, the question becomes, if we have a policy that comes out of the communications committee, right? That's one thing. But if we say, for instance, I'm going to notify people for this street, but not that street, right? So when they paid Garrick and they don't send a letter out for Garrick, right? But they paid Greensburg Pike and we send a letter out for Greensburg Pike, right? Now we're getting inconsistent service to our residents. So a policy which comes through the committee is the way that those things are supposed to work. That's kind of the first space of it. The second space of it, to your very, very astute point, right? Like maybe we do want a second person that they can communicate with, right? Again, something that would come out of the communications committee in terms of a policy on how we come talk to people about those projects. But if we did want a second person that they communicate with, I would think, and again, I would defer to the communications committee, but the person that they probably should talk to, right, about projects going on is the chair of the infrastructure committee, because they would have the most knowledge and information on what's actually happening. So I can appreciate your points. I understand that you are doing this in the best interest, right? But I'm also realistic about how council operates. And as individual council members, yeah, you can do what you'd like, right? But as a council to operate effectively, right? That's the point of the committees and working inside of the committees. If we choose not to work inside the committees, and you can choose to do that, right? Then what happens on my end is I have to kind of redirect things constantly and say, okay, so it's still going to come from Matt and infrastructure as far as council is concerned, right? And so now I got to reach out, right, to ACED and say, like, listen, so Lance, this is what's up, right? Like, we have, council hasn't greenlit anything yet. We don't know where we're at. We're not going to be taking the next step. This is kind of how I'm just using that as kind of fictitious space. So we operate inside of, right, this committee structure. I assume that you also want to operate in that committee structure. I get that, so I'm not questioning that. I assume you have the best interest of the residents. I think that was your point. Inside the finance committee, right? Absolutely, ask whatever questions you want inside the finance committee. That's the finance committee. Ultimately, the chair will determine what questions are relevant to move forward with staff. Right? That's true of every committee, right? When I sit inside a committee anywhere and I've got 15 questions, if the chair says, listen, we're not gonna get to all of those today, right? Some of those have been asked and answered before, right? So we're not going to address those, right? I am now, beholden to the chair. And that's the structure part that I want to make sure everybody understands, right? Because it's a question of there's appointed leadership for each specific space, right? Inside of that appointed leadership, right? Which I'm not the chair of the finance committee. I don't have a say. I'm not the chair of the communication committee. I expect that I would get recommendations from them who I have put in those positions because they have specific expertise, right? So I've tried to put people in spaces that they bring things to the table, yourself included, right? Bringing things to the table, absolutely, right? That we are able to get back for council as a whole, quality recommendations. When we start going outside of that, it starts breaking that down.
So, as far as just going back to Allegheny County, it is costing taxpayers nothing almost, except for us having to pay for our manhole covers to address the paving of the road. That is something that is done by the county,
Yes.
set by the county.
Absolutely.
When I had a conversation with the county at that particular time, Greensburg Pike was not on their agenda to be addressed this year. And they decided to address it this year. I did not present that it was the entire council's will. I inquired about the condition of the road. And so, again, I just feel that we each are elected to represent members of this community. And us doing things in the committee or outside of the committee that are for the benefit of the community. I don't see that there's a problem with that. And as far as the infrastructure committee is concerned, I'm not stepping on Matt's toes in any kind of way. I have reached out to the infrastructure committee to discuss Beulah Road and Lewin Lane. And I'm not really clear as to where we stand on any of the issues that were presented for that particular situation. So in this area, I took an initiative and got it addressed.
And so again, and I'm gonna kind of close it because I don't want this to turn into kind of a nonstop. We have all the council here. But the point being, committees exist for a reason. This council functions in a committee structure. Okay. The infrastructure committee functions for infrastructure. The communications committee functions for communications. The policies that we choose to do, right, as a council. So if we're going to reach out to the people on Greensburg Pike with a letter, right, which I'm not even saying is a bad idea. It's not my
I
point.
requested that
but-
for Lombard
but-
Road and Elm Hill Road.
but
as
my-
well.
But my point is, it comes out of a committee, right? And right now, right? I've been through a number of millings, right? I turn on that road every day. I recognize the challenges. But if we are going to function in the way that is most effective, we will do so in a committee structure. If you feel that you want to operate outside the committee structure, I cannot prevent you from doing that. Right? There's not some kind of authority where I can be like, Brooke, you can't do it. You can do what you choose to do. What I'm telling you though, is that in doing so, right, you are not doing so representing council or the will of council.
And
And
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem.
it's not a question of you
with-
saying it,
I don't have a problem.
but I want to
with
be clear, it's not a
it.
question of you saying it. It is a question of how we operate. So moving forward, right, I will provide everyone with a new committee structure. Right, a couple of changes here, a couple of changes there, nothing major. Like I said, I'm not going to reshape the finance committee in the middle of anything. And the finance committee is working great, by the way. Just side note, infrastructure committees work great. But I just want everyone to recognize that this is how we operate moving forward. This is how we're supposed to operate. And I will close it because I'm belaboring the point. So closing that, is there anything else that we have on this before we move into an executive space? Number 8, see, we skipped, then we skip back, and it's recap every time. 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So, all right, yeah, and 13, I did get to 13. I forgot to hit. So let's move to 8. Matt, floor is yours. So, somebody
So, yeah.
talk to me.
There's a few things on the infrastructure, Matt. We have a lot on that agenda, so you can see the report. I think we mentioned, Beulah and Lewin, it's a meeting, it's something we talk about each month, as we try to wait for PennDOT to give us their final idea about the right-hand turn lane, which is something that was brought up just a few minutes ago. Just make sure that everyone knows we didn't lose track of that. It just takes time to get the answer. So we're looking at, adopting an amendment to our code to get in line with the International Property Maintenance Codes. We've advertised that with Gavin's office. We're getting close to being able to advertise, I hope 5G. Maybe we can do that, but yeah, look, I know we talked about getting into the zoning ordinance, which might make us move that back a month, but there's got to be a time when we do this. The fact is that they're coming. And if we don't have anything, they'll come no matter what. If we do have something, we're not stopping them. It's just a matter of maybe how they could come to our community. But if you look around, boy, they seem to be popping up a little more.
Yes.
We also want to discuss moving forward with that committee with contracting with energy. The Boroughs Association has a broker that is affiliated or partnered with the Boroughs Association, so they've done some vetting. They do have green options. I think I forwarded some of you that today. As many of you know, the energy market is about to dynamically change. And I'm concerned this borough has never taken advantage of the savings that can happen when you contract your energy in and lock in prices. And probably have lost some money that way. And I think it's time to act before they start to really move and get to a point where the Duquesne Light and people's natural gas bills are a good bit higher than they are now. So we're going to be moving towards that, but just want to give you a heads up on that. There's nothing to act on tonight. And then lastly, we're looking at Airbnbs and the concept of short-term rentals and making sure we have Churchill appropriate regulations for those in our community.
Thanks.
Yeah, all these things I will just say are highly complex. They require a great deal of research on Matt's part and Dennis's part and Alex's part. And I would encourage you to, raise any questions you might have with Matt because A, he explains them really well. And B, he's very much on top of what's going on here. So I appreciate your leadership on this score.
It's only because we have good staff.
So, yeah,
Question?
and a
So,
great engineer.
I just have a question for Matt, not anything specific in terms of the ordinances, but the amount of work that the committee is being tasked with. It's a lot sitting in, on your shelf.
Yep.
Is there anything that can be farmed elsewhere?
I don't think there's anything that can be farmed elsewhere. We're handling it well. We're taking it one step at a time, prioritizing the issues and working through them. So
He did send me an email last night when I brought up about the permit issue for the decks and the sheds and the fences. He was like, can we do that like next year, like late next year?
There you
So
go.
Gavin and I have been going back and forth on how we can look at that. But yeah, so
Yeah,
Matt
that's
does
my-
say
that's my only word.
he has the
I have
ability as a
no
chair to say
question
no,
about,
later.
Skill set. I have questions.
No, right.
no, we've got a couple on the books here. We'll get those ones taken care of
Yeah.
and move on to the next. So we're doing
Fair
fine.
enough. Fair enough.
Right.
Well, thank you then. Anything else coming out of infrastructure right now?
Nothing else.
Perfection. Anything coming from my friends in communication?
Yes, so Alex worked really hard on the communications and social media policy. We worked on that for a little bit. So thank you for your work on that. So what the goal is to really strive to make policies that reflect best practices. So how do we use social media? How do we use specifically like the staff computer usage, those kinds of things. So that's a policy we worked on. Is that going to be Is that on published already? Not published, but for council to
We
look at?
shared it in a binder. I
Give us
just
the
make sure we
binder,
have the
yeah.
binder again.
Yeah. for
Calvin
next-
gave us the part of it, and he's reviewed all of it.
Yes.
Yeah, you circulated my comments.
Yeah, I saw those. Okay. We have 1,219 savvy citizen.
Great.
Oh, that's good.
Citizens. I don't know what the word is.
Savvy
But we
citizens.
need more, obviously, because there are more people in the area, so. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. If you need help, please reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help you. Download it on your phone and kind of walk you through it. I have no problems doing that.
In the manager's report, you'll see our statistics for Instagram, LinkedIn.
Yep.
Facebook, and Savvy Citizen. So all of those vehicles, we want to encourage people to
Sure.
subscribe to and sign up for.
Well, what may have helped is during the Celebrate
Yeah.
Churchill Day, we had a nice one-sheeter that we were passing out to everybody
Mhm.
that listed all our social media. And I think, because I would talk to people and they'd say, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So maybe that helped garner a few hundred extra savvies and others as well, you
Yeah.
know?
Hey, is
I
there,
think that
is there any
helps.
way of knowing of those thousand some people, who's Churchill? Who's
Yes,
first?
when
and
Yes.
who's
actually,
second?
when we hit a send, that breaks it out. It's so there's about 1,500 households in Churchill. And about 500 of them seem of Savvy Citizen are coming out of that Churchill now. As you can imagine, some people's daughter or son signs up for Savvy Citizen. They live in a neighboring community and their parent lives in Churchill and they, communicate that way. So yeah, we need to encourage both the internal and external, right?
Mhm.
Some people work here and they sign up for Savvy Citizen
Mhm.
because they just kind of want to know what's going on. So yeah, it's about 500 households. And I think when we were at Swift Reach, we were topping out at like 350 or
Mhm.
something.
So,
Oh, so that's
We have a lot more,
Good.
significantly more.
Yeah,
so just for my clarity, because I'm making sure I'm catching all this. We're sitting at about 50% of the households
Yes,
signed up direct on Savvy Citizen.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, give
Give or
you
take,
know,
ish.
sure,
Right.
yeah.
Because there'll be some that are signed up that probably aren't, some that are listed somewhere else that are, right?
Right.
Both those things will happen.
Mhm.
So, and do we have a target for the kind of upcoming year where we'd like to be? Have we considered that and consider kind of,
That's something we can definitely discuss and ways to
right, try to
increase that.
kind of goal
Mhm.
set?
Goal set
and
that,
see
yeah.
if we can,
absolutely.
we can reach.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I think you guys are good.
Since tomorrow's election day, we think the possibility of setting a couple of those
Oh, yeah.
flyers out, and there's a table set up there.
Yeah.
Tables set up at 1 and 2. There's tables at each polling
Each
place.
polling place.
You just set them on a table. We walk by, see it, grab one.
You could take some.
I think we have extra.
Yeah.
There are extras in there.
We'll make some if we don't.
If we don't have, them, we'll make something.
I mean, we can take it right next door tonight. and
I can
Yeah,
go
me
there.
too.
The other
Me
places
too.
tomorrow.
Yes.
I can do that tomorrow.
Same here. I can do that
Right,
tomorrow.
pass them out at.
Yeah, obviously, it would be up to each judge of the election of each precinct to
Yeah.
determine that, but it's not partisan. It's not like you're asking.
No,
anything
it's
up
not.
front. It's
No.
Just an information thing.
No, I'll
That's a-
definitely do that
Yeah.
tomorrow.
The
I.
definition of nonpartisan, like general information for your government.
That's,
irrespective of
it's
who
public,
you elect.
yeah.
Probably the best space that
But
you
you'll
could
be
be.
surprised maybe if a judge says, "Oh, I determine what's out on a table or something.
Yeah,
There's been a table out here at District 1 forever.
yeah.
With
And
people
two,
doing all kinds of things at that table. And what we found out was it's a matter of space. If it's 10, is it 10 feet away from the polling place? As long, if it's in the same building, that's not the point. The point is you can't do those things within 10 feet. So if you've got the space, you can have a table that has all kinds of stuff on it. And it's the same thing, there's a little table at St. John Fisher.
Yep.
When you walk in, they put stuff right there. That's more than 10 feet.
I just set up a card table.
Yeah,
A good segue to, we have to vote tomorrow.
Yes,
Yes, very important.
if you haven't voted by mail.
But is it St. John Fisher here?
here in the church
Beulah?
yeah, yeah.
What's where?
and Beulah Presbyterian.
Right.
Right.
And if you
To-
don't
to
know your
your-
voting location, vote PA, just type that into a search engine.
Right.
And you can type in your address and it'll give you a specific precinct. And the
Right.
county also has a link to that through the website.
Yes.
You're at this minute not knowing
Mhm.
where you'll be voting tomorrow.
It was in our newsletter as well.
Yes, it was.
And if you voted by mail, check those lists to make sure there was no issue with your date,
Yeah,
because they rejected all those ballots. that-
There was
that
a-
had the wrong
There was
date.
a issue with my ballot. And I visited the people today downtown. And I was honestly thrilled, if I can just say, this, because it was such minutia.
Mm.
It was the last two that I wrote, and the loop was too small. And they
Oh.
felt that it could have looked like a zero. And I'm thrilled that they're expecting all kinds of challenges. And they're at that level, wanting to be sure that a ballot
Well,
is not
Gavin, where
challenged.
are those lists public?
That-
County
Oh, yeah.
website, yeah, the county has some posts,
Oh, yeah.
so there's two spreadsheets, so there's in PDF and spreadsheet form, two different lists, one because they lacked a date and the other because the day was something,
Right.
or something wrong with the date.
I'm going to use that example on my daughter to make sure that she clearly.
I'm telling
writes her
you.
Fours,
Loops or
because she
twos?
makes her, no, she makes her fours and nines.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Way too similar.
That's-
She loops it and then drops it down.
I saw that and thought, I must, what is this? That's what it was. It wasn't that I missed a date, it was that it wasn't quite.
It's never, like, it's never missed.
No, it's
Lesson-
great.
Lesson learned.
It's great.
It's a day shoot. Yeah. All right, I appreciate that. Anything else come out of communication?
no,
Climate action?
We're set to meet on Friday. We received comments from Gavin regarding the waste management ordinance, which will update the borough code for consistency with the recently adopted waste management contract. So we'll meet on Friday to discuss that. And then hopefully we'll have that ordinance ready for review by the council here next week. Alex, is that reasonable?
Yeah, let me just add, my apologies to the Climate Action Committee for having to review, it's quite a document, and it's a bit of a Frankenstein situation, because we took, and was it Michelle Nestor was that our consultant? And she did a great job getting this kind of started off, but her approach was more, let's say, kind of a comprehensive, and it went far beyond the level of regulation that this borough has ever had as it relates to solid waste collection. So I tried to scale some of that back, and some more might need to come back out of there. There's things like, what time of day, certain things need to be put out. Not that that's not an important item, but I'm not sure it's something you want in your ordinance, because it's becomes then difficult to change. So there may be some certain things you want to just defer to the contract or keep as administrative sort of, administrative issues. So kind of when you're reading to take a look at that. And then also, I know that there's been some turnover at the contractor, but if there's any way to get their eyes on what we're considering, just to make sure they're not seeing any, anything that's disconnect from the service they're intending to provide, I think that would be, very helpful, so that, I just don't want to pass something that's not consistent. And the contract itself, the specifications are many, many pages long, and the ordinance is very lengthy. So it's possible, especially because there's a few cooks in the kitchen on this, that something is not, perfectly lined up. So certainly, pride and authorship on that. Feel free to mark that thing up or ask questions or whatever, and I'll try to address them as quick as I can.
All right, thanks for that, Kevin.
If I may, I think this is one of those things too, where some history, when things have happened in the past, I'm gonna think about something like what time the cans have to be out. I mean, we've had so much discussion about that. And there's small things that you might think wouldn't be a big deal, but they are. So that's, I think that and Gavin has all that. So, it's not easy.
I miss Ray.
Yeah, I was thinking Ray when we do trash specs and contracts and ordinances.
Nobody did so our prior vice president of council.
Yes.
who passed
Yes.
away, but nobody did,
Rachel,
nobody did garbage specs.
that's right. Nobody
like
did
that.
garbage like they did.
Enough to make everyone.
Never want
laugh
to
and
talk about
cry.
it.
Yeah, so, okay. Anything else coming out of climate action, sir?
That's all for today. So we'll be meeting on Friday. We'll go over that in detail and get Gavin, if we have any comments, we'll work through Alex, get back to you, okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I have just a couple things. Just wanted to keep in the front of things that a deer management program. Maybe we talked a little bit about getting something together to discuss how we can manage the population
And that will be just to, not to cut you off, but to cut you off.
Yeah.
That will be handled inside of the recreation of the committees,
Gotcha.
so they will, we
Gotcha.
will reform.
the electronic signs. I know we had some feedback from Jay Cost about the electronic speed
Oh,
signs, so we can get those, keep that out. And also, people in the garden club who do the litter stuff asking like some more litter signs, do not litter signs.
I agree
Along
with
our
that.
roadways.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Quick question, since you brought up signs, what is the dimension of our sign ordinance right now for allowable signs?
Oh, it's,
Anybody remember off the top of their head?
I don't know if it's the same for all. What type of sign are you talking about?
Well, I'm just starting with the school signs that are out front on the no guns, no litter, no, those signs. Have you seen those?
oh, yes, isn't it?
I thought we were
You're
pretty.
not talking billboard?
No,
We debated it so much that
I know, that's what, because this went on for forever, and so now it's phased out of my brain.
I think it's 2x3, isn't
It
it?
was pretty small.
2x3? I think that's it, 2x3. Or maybe it's less than that. 18, no.
So I'm not gonna slow us up right now.
I know.
But if you can find it later, just let me know. Somebody shoot it to me real quick. I want the
It's in there.
So just so you know, E-code allows us to have as an app on your phone, borough code. So I'm just looking up on the phone app, which is kind of nice. It's, section
Signs.
321. Yeah, so it's kind of nice to have on your phone.
Are you
It
there?
is, and
on
I have it on my
signs?
phone, except I don't have my phone, which also means, by the way, that my wife right now is probably texting me wondering like what's going on in life, and I
Uh-huh.
can't answer. So if you're watching this, which she's not, you know, sorry.
It's,
Hey,
it's
just one other
organized
thing, too.
strangely, Alex.
And I don't know what committee this would go into, but I'd like to see this
Communication.
get updated on it.
Yes,
That'd be us.
that'd be us.
That party. goes
Yeah,
right there.
I already had some ideas about it. I really liked it.
I find like 1,000 of these downstairs.
I mean, it looks the date that it is.
Yeah.
Which
It
is.
certainly does.
But it's retro.
The problem is, there's so much information that's
Certificate.
the same.
So yes, with that.
But I like the idea
That
of like,
font is, you can't deny that font.
Yeah.
Wallpaper?
And anything that you may need in terms of your packet that you need assistance from.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah.
include this in the packet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like
We
it.
we are working on new packets. We finally got together, I got with Ashley and Ralph to provide where we left off and where I need to pick up. So we're working on it.
yeah, Paul, we could touch base for sure.
Yeah, it'd be real simple to do.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anything else you got, Paul?
Yeah.
Fair?
Nope, that's it.
Anything we missed, Dennis? Hate to have you have to sit through this and, just have to sit through it. I suppose you may like that, so. All right. Any other comments from folks?
Oh, I actually do.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
are, after many years, reinstating Santa Claus on the fire truck.
Nice.
And it's been approved by Ralph and our firefighters, so. We have to work out details, have to find a
Did you say
Santa.
Ralph was gonna be Santa?
I asked him,
He's
he's,
on Facebook watching. I'm
right,
sure you're-
yeah. He said, no way, so,
No, what they said is they're gonna contact the North Pole and see if Santa can get it on a schedule.
exactly,
Yeah.
right.
Can you fit it in the
Right.
schedule?
Right, but we're thinking Santa may appear on Saturday, December 17th. Go around the neighborhood like the Easter Bunny goes and details to come. In fact, maybe we will hopefully have it finalized by next
Good.
week.
I love
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it was approved by Ralph, which is
Yeah.
what we needed.
So we used to have that for
So,
years and years.
I know, and I was talking, I was having a conversation with the mayor about it.
Yep.
And it's been about I would say a good 5 years,
He's a
maybe
good-
more.
Longer than that.
No, really,
Yeah.
maybe
For
more.
They
COVID
could
for
get
2.5.
Right.
Add 5 under that.
Right,
Next,
so,
the rec is meeting next week, correct?
the rec board is
Next-
meeting next week. Yes, yes, yes.
The 19th?
But really, I think this really isn't the rec board.
Yeah,
Because
this
it's
is
just
Okay.
like.
it's really
council.
kind of
Right,
just
okay.
Ralph
Yeah,
and the guys.
borough.
it's Ralph and the guys.
Right, Ralph and the guys. We need
Ralph
somebody to
and the
drive the truck. Yeah, so,
Let's
look
see
for
what-
more information to come.
Oh, that would be
But
great.
that's a fun thing, yes. Although I will need a little bit of a budget to, have candy to pass
That's the
out.
problem.
There it is.
Good, suddenly.
Pass out some
By
candy.
the way,
We do have a request from these folks from the rec board, do we
Okay.
not?
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
That was received.
yes,
Finance committee had that.
yes.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, yes, that's right. That
Yep.
was enough.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Litigation matter? Anything else? Right, hearing nothing else, we are going to
Yeah.
move into an executive session for a litigation matter. I appreciate everybody's time. We'll adjourn this meeting and move directly into exec.
Great.
Minutes of stuff.